What's going on, everyone? So yesterday we talked about the new information from the Jazz notes that came out. Just to reread it, is the holdup on talks around the Russell Westbrook to Utah trade is strictly about Jared Vanderbilt. The Lakers want him and the Jazz want to keep him. Teams are remaining in contact, trying to work out a deal. Now, we have been told for a couple days now that the Jazz and the Lakers are negotiating and having conversations to try to get a deal done around Russell Westbrook. The Jazz need to unload players. They would love some picks, and they'd be more than willing to take on Russ in one swoop rather than trying to find individual trades for each of these guys. The Jazz, they can't take back, player swaps. Like, you can't trade a Mike Conley for, X player, because then the Jazz have to move off that guy. Now, you might be thinking, like, well, why is this taking so long in regards to Jared Vanderbilt? Like, why would this be the deal breaker, right? That's not what I think it is. I think what it is, because the Lakers don't want to have to give up both picks. And if they had to, obviously they'd like to get a young guy back, a Beasley, a Vanderbilt, preferably both. So what we saw the other day, which I did do a video on, I'll even link that video down in the description below, is the potential of a Beasley, Bogdanovich, and Conley trade for for Russell Westbrook, right? And then a first. But the Jazz want both first. So if I had to guess, and I don't know this for certain, but this is kind of the only way I see this being the holdup for Vanderbilt, is the Jazz looking at it as like, we don't want to give you Vanderbilt, but we want both your first. And the Lakers are looking at it as, we don't want to give up both first, but we want Vanderbilt. And they either meet in somewhere in the middle where Vanderbilt is not included, Lakers keep a first, or Vanderbilt is included, and then they get a first. Because we got the report that the player side has been done. And it looks like, because nothing has been said about the pick side being a holdup, that it's just centered around Vanderbilt. So I think both sides have an understanding at least of what the picks look like. So it's just going to come down to the Vanderbilt end. Now, that doesn't mean that a trade is, okay, well, one of them will cave and Vanderbilt's gone and that's it. That's not what this means. Now, I do think the Jazz trade is the most likely scenario. The Lakers, they still have time. So do the Jazz, right? They both have a lot of time still to kind of ride it out and see what happens, right? Both of these teams have a couple more weeks until training camp, so there's not like that urgency. But the Jazz do need to move off guys, and I've said this before in like live streams and stuff like that, is that no news is good news. Lakers haven't filled in those two remaining spots. The Jazz haven't traded any of the other players, even though there are rumors and reports that, other teams want guys like Bogdanovich and Conley and stuff like that. Yet the Jazz haven't entertained or done anything with those deals. So no news is good news. Very likely, the Wolves are going to have to unload one of these two guys. I mean, they don't have to, but if they want those picks from the Lakers, they're going to. Because what are the other options here? Yes, the Lakers could take on a Conley, Clarkson, and Bogdanovich, but that makes no sense for the Lakers unless you're not giving up any picks. Now, if the Lakers don't have to give up a single pick, and this is the deal, Conley, Bogdanovich, and Clarkson, then maybe the Lakers do that, right? Maybe the Jazz just say, hey, we need to unload guys. You can keep your picks. Let's unload Conley's contract, unload Jordan Clarkson. And in that scenario, the Lakers, I think, would do that. Because, yes, the Lakers want to keep and preserve cap space, but when it comes to keeping those first, if a player comes out, then, say Kyrie wants to go to the Lakers, well, then you have those first to move off of these guys, especially Clarkson. Clarkson would be easy to move. He doesn't have a ridiculous salary. He's making like $13-14 million a year. Conley would be an expiring contract. There's a team out there that would take that first from the Lakers. The Spurs this year were willing to take on Russ for one of those Lakers first. The Spurs would probably take on Conley for one of those first. So the Lakers could get that done and move off of these guys if need be. You just get some more able bodies. My concern would be you basically have too much guard depth, but maybe the Lakers could move like a Clarkson in a separate deal, or, something along those lines. Maybe they could work out a 3-team deal where Clarkson goes to another team that is desirable. I don't know. I just think that this would be something the Lakers might explore. But I think ultimately, if a deal's going to get done with picks, Beasley or Vanderbilt's going to get dealt. One of those two are going to end up going, and I think Beasley is the most likely scenario. I think it makes the most sense for them. So I think that if you're the Jazz, you are doing everything to keep Vanderbilt and unloading these three guys. But you have to unload these three guys. So what is the alternative? Like I was talking about earlier, your alternative is you move these guys in separate deals, but you're taking on probably long-term contracts. Like Miami would probably move Duncan Robinson for Jordan Clarkson and Bogdanovich. Like they would probably love that. Here, take this. But for the Jazz, that makes no sense. Why would you do that if you're the Utah Jazz? You're taking on, 4 years, $25 million a year, something like that, to go and do what? Move Bogdanovich? Like that makes no sense. And the Jazz, based on reports, they look at Conley, Bogdanovich, Beasley, and Vanderbilt, like basically all of their guys. They look at all of them as a pick player. Now, I don't think anybody's giving up first round picks for Conley. I don't think anybody's giving up a first round pick for Jordan Clarkson. Now, maybe like some heavily protected first for Clarkson, maybe, but Clarkson is very inefficient. The guy's shot 42% from the field the last 2 seasons and like 31% from 3. The guy is a shot chunker. Like he's not very effective. He's like, he's won a 6-man award and scored 18 points, but he shot more shots than most stars shoot. Like the guy is not that good. And he's young and he's on a reasonable contract. So Bogdanovich, like who's trading a first round pick for Bogdanovich? 33 years old, doesn't really play a ton of defense. Yeah, he's a sizable body, can shoot, but like which team is giving up a first? Now, again, maybe a heavily protected first, but in reality, the options very likely are they have to take on bad contracts or they're going to have to give up picks to have these guys taken off of, or they're just going to have to settle for a really like basically just giving these guys away. Like I said, a top, 20 protected pick, top 15 protected pick, and you send out Bogdanovich. At that point, that's stupid. You might as well just take the Lakers for just one first from the Lakers, because the likelihood of the Lakers being bad in 2027 is a real possibility. And I'm a Laker fan. I bleed purple and gold. I love the Lakers, but like what's going to happen after LeBron? We have no assets, really. We're in a weird situation after that. Do we keep Davis? Do we trade Davis? I mean, in 5 years, we might be in shambles again and just a repeat of before LeBron came. And that's what teams are banking on. Now, I hope that's not the case. And I still live by the motto of like the Lakers are the Lakers. The Lakers are going to get the stars. Somebody's going to come sooner or later. But when it comes to this deal, it would make the most sense for the Jazz to take that first from the Lakers because it's probably going to be the best first that they could get. So even just one, these two guys that you see on screen, Conley and Bogdanovich, I think could go to the Lakers right now. But the Lakers aren't going to want just these two guys. Like the Lakers don't just want Conley and they just don't want Bogdanovich. And I think the Jazz, if they're going to do a deal with the Lakers, I think they want to move off of all three guys. I think if the Lakers would take Conley, Bogdanovich, and Clarkson, I think this deal would be done. Especially for like one first. But that's terrible. Like, I don't think that makes sense at all. I think you're doing nothing but helping the Jazz all across the board. Giving the Jazz the pick. You're helping them move the players for essentially free. You're taking on bad fits. You're taking on too much depth. Like, it's just, I don't think that would be the best scenario for the Lakers. Now, I don't think that these two would be bad, but I don't think you get Conley and Clarkson. I think it's one or the other. So who else are they going to trade besides Beasley or Vanderbilt? Like, those are the only two options that, one, that they can even trade currently, and two, that would be worth it for the Lakers to give up. So it's got to be either Beasley or Vanderbilt because the Lakers aren't going to take Clarkson, Conley, and Bogdanovich. It makes no sense for the Lakers. It makes no sense for anybody other than the Jazz. Like, unless you don't have to give up a first. If you don't have to give up a first, the Lakers might be looking at that as like, okay, we don't have to give up a first. We can take these 3 guys that can help us now. Maybe we could flip Clarkson. Clarkson's a guy that teams may want to take, and we don't need much. Maybe we get like a second round or a couple seconds or something like that, or maybe a highly protected first. Just something to maybe help us move off of Conley next season, if need be, something like that. I could see something like that unfolding and taking place. But I do think very likely the 2 guys on screen, Conley and Bogdanovich, I think they're the 2 that are going to go out. And I just think it's coming down to who's going to blink first. And we still have time. You still got a couple weeks, right? You still got about 2-3 weeks before training camp. So I think that this could get drawn out. But I think if anyone blinks first, it's Utah. Just because Utah... Here's the thing. At the end of the day, however you feel about it, whether, Utah, like, no team's helping Westbrook, whatever. At the end of the day, the Lakers don't have to move off of Russ. Do they want to? Would they like to? Absolutely. But here's the difference, and here's why the Lakers have the leverage here. They could keep Russ, and okay, that's it. They keep Russ. Where if you're the Jazz, you can't keep these guys. You have to trade them. So you're either trading your young guys or you're trading your vets. Who would you rather trade? And who's taking? Because I hear people all the time, other teams would take Conley and then Who's that team that is going to give up an asset to take on Mike Conley? Who is that team that is going to give up an asset to take Jordan Clarkson? And on top of that, they can't trade a player because the Jazz have to unload that guy. So how? Explain to me. And I'm sure there is a way. I'm sure the Jazz could make it work. But what are you going to do? You're going to buy guys out? You're going to just pay all this money just to pay all this money? For what? Like, it makes no sense. The Lakers are the number 1 out for the Jazz. And that is why I think the Jazz are the team to cave. I think the Jazz are the team to just say, call it quits. Because they're going to look at it as like, you know what? We have to move off these guys. We can try to see what's out there. Try to see what is, which they may be already. Because there's talks about, teams wanting Bogdanovich and stuff like that. But they're probably looking at those deals and going like, yeah, we can't take on that contract. Can't do this. Can't do that. This, that, and the other. And so they're kind of stuck. But you have the Lakers who are the ultimate board wipe. That's my thing. That's kind of why I think the Lakers are the team that has the leverage here, that has the power. Because at the end of the day, the Lakers don't have to do anything. The Lakers can just stand pat. The Jazz, at some point, have to move off of these guys. But anyway, as always, those are my thoughts and opinions. And I pass the question to you. What do you think? Do you think the Lakers are stuck with Russ? Do you think that these 3 are going to be the 3 that lead the charge this upcoming season? Do you think the Jazz end up caving? Do you think that maybe they include Vanderbilt? Do they not? Like I said, I think if I had to guess, and I don't know this for certain, but my guess is it's both picks and Vanderbilt, or it's no picks and one pick. One pick with Beasley, 2 picks with Vanderbilt, something along those lines. That's probably what this is. It's just like, so I think it comes down to what do the Jazz value more, Vanderbilt or those future picks is what I think it ultimately comes down to. Or maybe it's even the difference between the 29th and 27th pick, things like that. So that's what I think this is if I had to guess. And I think sooner or later the Jazz cave. I think sooner or later the Jazz say, okay, fine. We'll give you Beasley, Conley, Bogdanovich, for a first and 2 seconds, and maybe a pick swap because you just do that. And now the Jazz, because everything the Jazz are getting now is just a cherry on top. It's just icing on the cake. Like they don't need any of this extra. It's just like, why not recoup those assets? We have to move off these guys anyway. But again, at the end of the day, if the Lakers are stuck with Russ, I don't think that's the end of the world. I don't think that that's the worst thing ever. I think these 3 will be fine. I think they'll be a lot better this year. I think Darvin Ham will have these guys buying in much more than they ever have. I think the Lakers will be in a good spot. But again, love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.